Let me tell you how a summer getaway turned into a full-blown showdown. The kind you never think will actually happen in your own backyard. Except it did, and honestly, it still feels a little surreal. Picture this. I'm standing on my porch, sipping coffee, watching the lake glitter in the morning sun, when out of nowhere, I hear this voice, shrill, commanding, the kind of tone that makes you straighten up even if you're not doing anything wrong. This vehicle must be removed immediately, or I'm calling the police. That's what she yelled, the self-appointed queen of our HOA, at my nephew Connor, who had just pulled into my driveway after a 4-hour drive. I mean, you ever watch someone go from zero to nuclear over nothing? That was Beatrice Caldwell. Perfect hair, iron pajamas. Thinks she's running Buckingham Palace instead of a lakeside subdivision. So, let me back up a sec. My name's Juan Hayes, 62, retired lawyer, lover of peace and good coffee. And until this week, I thought I'd left all the courtroom drama behind. My lake cabin's my sanctuary, tall pines, quiet water, the kind of place you go to remember how to breathe again. Connor's a good kid, polite, gentle, dealing with heartbreak in finals, so I'd invited him out for a break. He pulls in, parks a little crooked with one wheel on the grass, and I don't think anything of it. But Beatrice? She's on him like a hawk, iPad in hand, snapping pictures, circling the truck like she's investigating a crime scene. And then, in front of half the neighborhood, she starts ranting about unregistered vehicles, security threats, property values. You know the type. She treats HOA bylaws like the Ten Commandments. Neighbors gather, some look embarrassed, some are clearly enjoying the show. Mrs. Johnson whispers to her grandson, "Don't go near that house, honey. Those people don't follow the rules." That stings more than I'd like to admit. For the first time in 20 years, I feel like an outsider in my own home. Beatrice starts dialing the police, full volume, and within 20 minutes, we've got 2 young officers in our driveway looking like they'd rather be anywhere else. I invite them in for iced tea, joke about missing a bank robbery, and they mumble something about following protocol before leaving just as quickly as they arrived. You'd think that'd be the end of it, right? Yeah, that happened. Next morning, there's an envelope jammed in my door. Urgent violation notice, $500 fine, 3 pages of legalese accusing Connor of everything from unauthorized vehicle placement to creating a precedent of disrespect for community standards. I'm reading this thing, looking at Connor's worried face, and something inside me snaps. I spent 30 years fighting bullies in the courtroom. Maybe it was time to dust off those old skills. That's when Beatrice really went on the offensive. She banned us from community amenities, had signs put up overnight, started holding emergency meetings in her living room where you could see her pointing at our house through the window. Suddenly, my tennis court reservation disappeared. The boat slip was off limits, and even the barbecue area was under review. Connor started blaming himself. Broke my heart, honestly. We walked down to the dock where I taught him to fish as a kid, and there's a new sign. Authorized personnel only. Violators will be prosecuted. He looks at me, barely whispering, "Maybe I should just go home." That's the moment, right there, when I had to decide. Do I roll over, or do I fight? Then, out of nowhere, our quiet neighbor Margaret Walsh knocks on my door. She's never been one for drama, but she slips me a manila envelope and tells me she used to live near Beatrice's old neighborhood. "That woman isn't clean," she says. Inside is a newspaper clipping. Beatrice forced to resign as HOA president up north after $18,000 went missing. Sketchy contractors, projects that never happened, no charges filed but run out of town just the same. Suddenly, it all clicks. This isn't about rules. This is about control, reputation, someone desperate to prove she's not the villain everyone thinks she is. I dig out my old law books, call an old colleague, Rebecca, a financial investigator, and start building a case. Connor, meanwhile, finds Beatrice's iPad left behind at the community center and snaps a photo of a landscape budget file. Just numbers, no proof of work, no real contractors. Piece by piece, it all adds up. Missing money, fake invoices, unilateral decisions. Rebecca traces the cash to BC Properties LLC, owned by none other than Beatrice herself. Then comes the big showdown. Beatrice calls a community meeting, convinced she'll win over the crowd with her PowerPoint presentation. Photos of Connor's truck, slides about property values, testimonials from concerned residents. She finishes by declaring, "I have no legal standing, no right to question her authority." That's when I stand up, open my folder, and drop the bomb. My name's on the original state template these rules are based on. I helped write the laws. You could hear a pin drop. Then the whispers start. The color drains from Beatrice's face, and the room starts to shift as I walk everyone through the violations. Unauthorized fines, denial of amenities, financial mismanagement. When she tries to interrupt, I deliver the final blow. Canceled checks made out to her own company for services that never happened. The crowd erupts. Someone calls the police. Margaret moves for an immediate vote to remove Beatrice as president. Unanimous. She tries to leave, but residents block her way, demanding answers. The fallout is swift. Police launch a formal investigation. The local paper runs the story on the front page. Her husband files for separation, and even her own family keeps their distance. The social isolation is brutal. Where she used to walk with authority, now people turn their backs. Conversations stop when she enters the room. Connor, who started all this wanting to disappear, now stands tall, understanding what it means to face down a bully. Margaret becomes interim HOA president. Transparency returns. Neighbors come together in a way I haven't seen in years. Kids play by the lake again. People chat over fences. The community feels alive, free. Beatrice is forced to sell her house, moves out under the gaze of half the neighborhood. It's justice, but not the kind you cheer for. It's sobering, seeing someone's life fall apart, even if they brought it on themselves. A few months later, with the lake peaceful, I get a letter from another community asking for help. They're dealing with their own Karen problem. Connor laughs, tells me I could be a traveling Karen buster. Maybe he's right. There's a satisfaction in using what I know to protect good people. As I take down the last illegal sign Beatrice put up, I realize retirement isn't about doing nothing. It's about doing the right things for the right reasons. So, tell me, was I right to expose Beatrice, or did justice go too far? Is it ever okay for a community to turn on someone who crossed the line? Drop your thoughts below, because, in the end, it's not just about rules or power. It's about standing up for what's right, even when it's messy, even when it's hard. And sometimes, the quietest person in the room is the one who's been waiting their whole life for the right moment to speak up. You know, after everything blew up and Beatrice left, most people figured that was the end of it. I wish life were that simple. The truth is, when you shake the foundations of a community, even for the right reasons, there's always fallout you can't predict. 3 months after the scandal, you'd think everything would be smooth sailing. But people are complicated. Old wounds don't heal overnight, and sometimes, chasing justice leaves scars you never see coming. At first, things were almost idyllic. Neighbors were friendlier than ever, potlucks by the lake, laughter echoing across the water, folks finally volunteering for committees, getting their hands dirty to make this place better. I started a Know Your Rights workshop, half expecting only a couple of people to show up, but the place was packed every month. Margaret, now officially president, brought homemade cookies and a gavel she claimed she'd found in her attic. Kids rode their bikes with no fear of being scolded for disturbing community tranquility. For a while, it felt like I'd helped set something right. But let me back up a sec, because when you rip off a Band-Aid, sometimes what's underneath is messier than you thought. See, Beatrice might have been the worst, but she didn't create the whole problem herself. Her absence left a power vacuum, and when you take away a dictator, sometimes you get chaos before you get democracy. It started small, 2 neighbors arguing over who should run the next yard sale. A heated debate over whether to allow boats with motors on the lake. Rumors swirling about someone siphoning electricity from the communal dock. One evening, Dominic, the new accountant turned president, showed up at my door with a pile of emails. "Juan, you mind taking a look at these?" Folks are already accusing each other of breaking rules, and I'm getting complaints that the new system's too loose. I tried to step back, honestly. I'd already played the hero, But this was my home, and after what we'd been through, I couldn't just ignore the undercurrents. So, I sat down with Dominic, Margaret, and a few other residents to figure things out. It quickly became clear that Beatrice's regime had done more than steal money. She divided people, made neighbors suspicious, and now that fear was looking for a new target. And then came the twist I never saw coming: an anonymous email sent to every resident, complete with a spreadsheet claiming to show new irregularities in the community funds. It accused Dominic and even Margaret of mismanaging recent improvement projects, suggesting that some contracts had gone to their friends at inflated prices. The email ended with a single line: "Meet the new boss, same as the old boss." The community was in uproar again. Old alliances fell apart, and new factions sprang up almost overnight. Some folks believed the accusations instantly. Others called it a smear campaign by Beatrice loyalists still lurking in the background. Me? I was torn. I trusted Margaret, but after everything, I couldn't just ignore the signs. You know what I mean? Once you've seen one neighbor steal, you start looking for the cracks everywhere. Connor, meanwhile, was thriving. He'd become the unofficial tech guy, helping organize digital votes for new rules, teaching neighbors to use group chats instead of yelling across lawns. But even he noticed the tension. "Uncle Juan, did we just swap one kind of control for another?" he asked one night while we grilled burgers on the deck. I didn't have an answer. The investigation started again, this time, led by an outside auditor the board voted to bring in. Margaret welcomed it, insisting on transparency, but Dominic was rattled. People who'd never cared about HOA meetings were suddenly digging through old emails, questioning every expense. The feeling of suspicion was contagious. In the middle of all this, a familiar face reappeared: Rebecca, my old investigator friend, back in town for unrelated work. We met for coffee, and she said something that stuck with me. "Juan, you know you can't fix every system. Sometimes people get the leaders they deserve. All you can do is make the truth impossible to ignore." Her words echoed in my mind when the audit findings finally landed. Turns out, most of the accusations were exaggerated or flat-out false, but there were some minor bookkeeping mistakes. Dominic had been careless, not crooked. Margaret, as it turned out, had actually donated money anonymously to help rebuild the playground, but hadn't wanted credit. The community breathed a collective sigh of relief, but the damage was done. Trust, once broken, is hard to patch up with just a report. The next board meeting was the most crowded yet. I watched as neighbors argued passionately, some defending Dominic, some demanding his resignation. For a second, I wondered if we were just doomed to repeat the same mistakes over and over, changing the faces but not the game. That's when Connor stood up. Not shy, not stumbling, but clear and firm. "Look, we're all tired of the drama. We can keep tearing each other apart, or we can actually talk to one another." My uncle showed me that rules only matter if we use them to protect, not punish. If you want this community to be better, don't just look for someone to blame, get involved. Make it better. Together. Maybe it was his youth. Maybe people were just exhausted, but a hush fell. And for the first time since Beatrice's downfall, I saw hope flicker in that room, not because someone made a grand speech or exposed a villain, but because we finally looked at each other as neighbors, not enemies. As the sun set over the lake that night, I realized that fighting for justice is messy, and sometimes the line between right and wrong blurs until you're not sure which side you're on. You can take down a tyrant, but you can't force people to trust again. That's work everyone has to do together, every single day. Let me ask you, was justice served? Or did we just trade one kind of trouble for another? Is it possible for a community to truly heal after betrayal? Or are we all just waiting for the next storm? Drop your thoughts below, because honestly, there's no easy answer. This is real life, messy, complicated, and worth fighting for anyway. If you've ever lived through neighborhood drama, you know what I mean. And if you've got advice on rebuilding trust or stories of your own HOA chaos, share them in the comments. Who knows, maybe the next lesson is out there, waiting for someone to tell it.